My name is Sarah Miller and I am 50 years old. I live in a quiet coastal town where the wind always smells like salt and memories. Every morning, I make a cup of coffee and sit by the window watching the sea. I tell people I like the silence, but deep down I know I am still waiting for someone who once promised he would come back to me. The morning light touches the waves, and I remember how it felt when I was 20, the way my heart would beat faster when I saw him walking towards me, his camera slung over his shoulder, his eyes curious and bright, the way he laughed at nothing in particular, and yet it felt like the whole world was laughing with him. I remember the warmth of the sun on our faces, the smell of the ocean, the sound of waves crashing against the shore. It all seemed so perfect, so alive. When I was 20, I met a man named David. He was a photographer traveling through towns taking pictures of people and sunsets and stories. He said he was chasing moments, and I laughed because I thought that was something only dreamers said, but he looked at me like I was one of those moments worth chasing, and from that day, everything changed. We would walk along the beach for hours talking about everything and nothing at all. He told me he wanted to see everything. He wanted to experience the world in its raw form. And I told him I just wanted to find someone to come home to. He said, maybe you can come home to me. And I believed him completely. I believed him with every piece of my young heart. I remember the way he held my hand, the way the wind tangled our hair together, the way the sand stuck to our feet as we ran along the shoreline laughing like fools. We fell in love quietly like waves that touched the shore again and again until it felt like time itself had stopped around us. Then one day he told me he had an opportunity to work overseas. He promised it was only for a year. He said, wait for me, Sarah, I will come back for you. And I did. I waited every single day, every single hours. At first, he sent letters, long letters filled with stories about cities and faces and skies that looked like forever. He wrote about cafes, he visited streets, he walked down mountains, he climbed oceans, he crossed. Every word was a photograph of his life, and I treasured them. I kept each letter in a box by my bed. I read them over and over again, imagining I was there with him. I could almost smell the rain in the streets he described. I could almost hear the music of the city through his words. Then one month there was no letter, then another month, then silence that felt like winter, silence that filled the corners of my apartment, silence that made the air feel heavy and cold. I tried to stay strong. I told myself he would come back soon. I told myself this is just a temporary pause, just a momentary absence. But as the weeks turned to months, my heart began to ache in a way that I had never felt before. One day his sister came to the bookstore where I worked. She said he got married abroad. I smiled and thanked her, then went to the back room and cried until my body could not breathe anymore. I was 22 and already felt like I had lived a whole life of love and loss. I felt like the waves of grief had crashed over me and carried me far away from everything I knew. I moved away from the beach. I stopped writing. I stopped believing. I stopped looking at the horizon, hoping to see him. I tried to forget, but his memory followed me like a shadow, like the echo of a wave that never fades, like a song I could not stop singing in my heart. Years passed. I became a teacher. I learned to smile again. I made friends. I even tried to love someone else. But every time someone held my hand, it felt wrong because it was not him. I started living for routine, not for dreams. And I told myself maybe that is what growing up means, learning to exist without what you love most. I remember sitting at my desk, looking out the classroom window, thinking of the ocean, the way the sun would sparkle on the water. One evening when I was 48, I went to an art gallery in New York. I was tired from the city, from work, from life, and then I saw him standing in front of a photograph of the same beach where we met. His hair was gray, his eyes older, but still the same. He looked at me and whispered my name, Sarah. I could not move. My heart forgot how to beat. I just stood there looking at the man I had waited for all my life. We sat together for hours talking about everything that happened. He told me he lost everything, the job, the marriage, the years. He said he tried to write to me, but the letters were never sent. I wanted to be angry, but I could not. I just said I forgive you because I needed peace. We walked along streets we had never walked before. We laughed at silly things. We cried over things we never spoke of. We tried to catch up on decades of lost time, and it felt like time itself had bent to give us one last chance. Then one morning he called and said he was in the hospital. They said his heart was weak. He smiled when I came and said, you waited for me even when I did not deserve it. And I said, some promises are too heavy to forget. He held my hand and whispered, I love you, and then he was gone. I remember the hospital room, the smell of antiseptic, the hum of machines, the quiet beeping of the monitor. I held his hand until it was cold. I kissed his forehead and whispered, I waited for you always. After his funeral, I went back to the sea. I carried his old camera and took one picture of the sunset the same way he used to, and I whispered, I kept my promise. I waited for you. I scattered his ashes into the waves and watched them disappear like years that passed too fast. Now I sit by my window every morning drinking my coffee, watching the same horizon where he once stood. I think of him every day, and I do not feel pain anymore. I just feel gratitude that I love someone so deeply that even time could not erase it. People ask why I never married. I tell them, because once you find the love that feels like home, you do not need another house to live in. Sometimes love does not mean staying together. Sometimes it just means waiting until the end. When the wind moves through the trees, I feel him near. When the ocean roars at night, I hear his voice calling my name, and I close my eyes and smile. Maybe he is out there taking pictures of heaven. Maybe he is waiting for me this time. And if someone asks me what love is, I say it is the courage to wait even when you know they might never return. It is the strength to forgive even when your heart is still breaking. It is the beauty of remembering someone forever even when the world tells you to forget. My name is Sarah Miller. I am 50 years old, and I am still waiting, not out of sadness, but out of love, because real love never dies. It just changes form. It becomes the air you breathe, the wind that whispers their name, and the heartbeat that reminds you once lived for something pure.